CVs are boring. Let's make it less boring and more successful and stuff. Hey, it's Mike from Job Ready English. I'm a coach that's helped international students and professionals find jobs at the world's biggest and best companies since 2013. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe for this video to get new videos every week on how to get hired. In today's video, we're going to talk about CVs. Yay! Literally the most boring subject ever. But I'm going to try and make it exciting for you because particularly if you're a student, you probably really struggle with CVs and there is a ton of information out there and most of it is useless, to be frankly honest with you. And if you're a professional, this is also going to help you as well. This video is split into 3 parts. First of all, we want to define the problem. Why do we have to write CVs? What is the problem that they actually fix? Once we define the problem and the benchmark to success, then we can start to think about general principles to sort of base our solution around. And finally, I'll lay out the solution for you in terms of best practice and the things that I've learned over helping clients and students and professionals write CVs over the past 8 years. If you want the template and the instructions for the template that I'm going to be talking about and referring to throughout this video, it's right there down in the description. Just click it, download it, give us your email and stuff so we can send you emails and things. Also, for those of you, if you don't have any work experience, I mean, the chances are everyone's got experience. You didn't just like appear in the middle of nowhere and go, oh my God, I'm a student and I need to write a CV. I always find that really weird when people talk about that. So the fact is you probably just don't understand how to tailor and tweak the experience that you have onto your CV so that employers look and go, this seems like a jolly fine fellow. So we're going to teach you how to do that as well. So let's talk about the CV problem. I mean, why do we have to do CVs at all? Why can't I just tell you I'm really cool, give me a job? Well, the reason is that it's basically a numbers problem. So there are more people than jobs. We need a quick way to introduce ourselves, our skills and our experience. For us, for the person who's applying, it means that we can apply for lots of jobs quickly in a standardized way. And for recruiters, they have a standardized way to kind of filter and look through the CVs, right? It's just a standard way of doing things, like a parking ticket or a railway ticket. It's just easier and it's quicker for both parties involved. Now, there was a time all the way back in the days of yore when actually a human being would sort of get a piece of paper and read through and go, oh yeah, Steve seems like a really nice guy. Now that still happens, but the fact of the matter is that there are now so many people and so many jobs that jobs boards came along and they said, hey, company A, we could help you by posting your job on a jobs board and you'll reach way more people than you can do with your one poor HR person who needs to recruit for those roles. Now these jobs boards like Indeed, LinkedIn, Monster, all of those types of things that you'll be familiar with will use something that's called an ATS. An ATS means an application tracking system. Now the chances are if you have applied for a job online, you've gone through some form of ATS. Now what an ATS does is really simply, it is a type of filter. So it filters the candidates you've got this job that they want you to do, and then you've got all of these applicants, and you've got maybe this one HR person who's like, holy crap, 6,000 people have applied to this job. So they use an ATS to sort of filter out candidates which aren't suitable and to funnel them down into a manageable level for the HR person. Now, depending upon the level of complexity and also sophistication of the ATS, it may have the ability to rank those candidates. And then what we're kind of thinking about is an ATS is basically kind of like keyword parsing. So keyword parsing is it's searching for very particular skills and experience, and it's saying, oh, you've got 26 things that you're looking for. We've identified these 26 skills and experiences that you're looking for in your job description. So we're going to match candidates and say they match 24 of the 26 things. That's a good candidate. This candidate doesn't really match anything. Now, bearing in mind, and this is an important thing to think about, robots are sophisticated, but they don't have common sense, right? So what that means is if your keyword doesn't match almost exactly, it might be discounted. Take something really simple like MS Office versus Microsoft Office. Now, for most people who know anything about computers, if you said to them, oh, I know MS Office, they're going to go, oh, MS equals Microsoft. Yeah, cool. But to a computer, they're just going to go, doesn't know Microsoft. Now, the more sophisticated ATSs might, but we need to operate on the assumption that the ATSs are not particularly sophisticated. So now we kind of know the problem that the CV solves. What is the percentage of CVs that actually kind of make it through the filter to this human being, to this HR person? Well, actually, there's a lot of misinformation about this, and this can be found in articles from Forbes, from CIO, which is Chief Information Officer, or from companies like Top Resume. And the figure that kind of gets bandied about a lot is this 70% of CVs are filtered from the ATS when you first apply, so 3/4 of the jobs. And when I looked into that, I was like, holy crap, I mean, where did they get that from? Because everyone quotes a study. So I was like, oh, sweet. Oh, I love studies. Let me go and read the study. So after I did a lot of reading about the study, turned out to be from 2012 from an American company called Practel, who had a product called Resumator Pro, which charged people $24.95 to use their service to apply for jobs and make your resume better. It was like how to beat the ATS. So all things aside, it kind of has an agenda, right? To sort of say like, oh, your CV's crap, but if you give us money, we'll make it better and you'll beat the ATS. Also, Practel went bust in 2013. So I guess they weren't really that good at what they were doing. So we kind of figure that this 75% figure is basically horseshit. And a lot of companies quote this figure and it's just, there's no basis for it. So we did some more digging around, and there's a really good article in the description from a website. It's called Ask a Manager, and this woman reproduced an article from another HR professional who basically did all of this work. So we're not taking any of the credit for it. So how can we find a figure? Well, the best thing that we could find, which was found by this woman whose article was reproduced on Ask a Manager, was a quote from the Wall Street Journal article from 2012 by John Sullivan, a management professor at San Francisco State University, who says, at many large companies, the tracking systems screen about half of all resumes. Now bear in mind, that's 9 years old. I mean, what percentage of CVs do you think ATSs filter out? Or do you have more up-to-date data? If so, please put an answer in the comments. I'd love to know, I'd love to find out, because I'm a numbers geek. So let's just basically assume that ATSs filter out 50% of CVs. So now we want to we know that all we need to do is make our CV good enough to be the 50% that makes it past the robots and get seen by a human being. Cool. Let's talk about general CV principles. How can we make sure our CV is part of the 50% that makes it through to getting viewed by a person? Here's 4 principles to think about. Number 1, CVs are basically about matching patterns. The ATS wants to find the keywords that are in the job description and match it to your skills and experience in your CV. If the ATS feels like you're a good match, you pass. If not, you fail. So the number 1 priority is getting your CV to match the job description in a natural way. Number 2, a human is unlikely to look at your CV when you first apply. An ATS will filter first and then show the recruiter the best CVs based on its algorithm. So we want to optimize for the ATS first and the human second. Almost as a follow-on from this, number 3, an ATS therefore doesn't care about what your CV looks like. They care about what it says, because all that they can pass or recognize is plain text. They want to match your keywords to the keywords it's searching for that particular job. Of course, a recruiter at some point is going to look at your CV, so it can't just be a stream of text, but we can get rid of a lot of the questions around visuals. And finally, basically building on the first 3 principles, there is no perfect CV. Your CV should change and adapt itself based on the job description. CVs are fluid and are liable to change, which honestly is why most advice about CVs is complete bullshit.
Don't forget to hit subscribe to get new videos each week on how to get hired. Now let's talk about the best practice for writing a CV using the SSE framework.
Sounds so cool, right? SSE frame. I literally just thought of that. I've never really thought about it like that, but it has to be cool and like hooky because it's a YouTube video, right? So I'm like, oh my god, what's this framework, Mike? Okay, so I've been helping clients with their CVs to get interviews and get jobs at some of the world's biggest and most difficult to get into companies since 2013. Now, I'm not saying this to brag, but I am bragging a little bit. What I'm trying to say is that I basically haven't really changed the way that I look at CVs since 2013. So I've used the same methodology for 8 years. It's been tweaked a little bit, but ATSs were becoming a thing in 2013. The other thing is really be mindful when you think about the information or advice that you get, and this is true for any subject, is that person or company getting the results that you want? Anyone can write a CV. You can get a CV template online for free. You can get a CV template on Word. It's easy enough to kind of put the document. But the point is, the document is not any good in and of itself. It's there for a purpose, which is basically, is this a CV that's getting interviews? Is this a CV that's helping me to unlock those doors? If it's not, and if people aren't really talking about that, then I would avoid them personally, because I think you're getting too caught up in the kind of flashy magic and tricks for optimizing for humans and for things to look pretty. And like we already covered, an application tracking system doesn't care if your CV is pretty. I mean, if you look at, there are actually there is a society of resume writers. There's actually an annual competition for resume writing, which is great, but it's mainly focused around the US market, which is different to the UK market. And that's another thing to kind of consider, which is the cultural fit. And we're really specifically talking about the UK. Anyway, enough of my ramblings. So what does SSE stand for? It stands for styling, structure, skills, and experience. Styling and structure is where we start for all CVs, and it gives us a really good basic foundation. So once we're kind of finished with styling and structure, we should have our kind of base CV, which we can use as a foundation. Skills and experience is what we use to then tailor our CVs to individual job descriptions. So we can kind of think about this as two kind of discrete elements or separate things to think about, because once styling and structure is done, we don't really need to do it again. But we will sort of come back and do little tweaks and changes every so often with skills and experience. So number one, let's talk about styling. So styling means, what does your CV look like and how long it should be? And the key idea to sort of think about it is that if an ATS can't read your CV, it's not going to include it in its kind of ranking or reporting system to the person who is looking at the end result. And this is really important. It basically means we want our CV to be as readable as possible and as close to plain text as possible. Like we've already said, we want to optimize for the ATS first and for a human second. And generally what people do is the other way around. They optimize for the human and the human eye, and it's just, well, look, unless a person is going to look at it, i.e. I'm going to hand it to you, I'm going to physically send it to you in an envelope, then probably an ATS is going to look at that. So here are some things to think about. Your CV should be no more than 2 pages long. Some, for example, investment banks, some industries want it to be a page. It is a little bit difficult to do at times and does really involve you being quite savage in terms of your editing. One thing I wouldn't advise you to do is just to shrink the font. I see this a lot, like people shrink it to like an 8 point. So you've optimized for the ATS, but when a human sees it, it just kind of goes like this. If they're anything like me, if I can't read it, it just goes in the bin. Why? Because I'm busy. I've got other things that I need to do. Now that we know an ATS is going to look at it, it kind of gets rid of a lot of stuff. So it doesn't care about headers, footers, photos, fancy doodly bits and all that kind of stuff. And all these different sort of things that I do see on CVs, because the ATS doesn't care. It's just passing for keywords. It's just passing for text. We don't need pictures, and also our content should be in chronological order. This is something that it's more of a structure thing, but I just wanted to throw it in there anyway. So we want to think about your most recent thing first, and then kind of go down through that in chronological order.
Here's the example CV from the free download that you can grab in the description below. It's not pretty, but you'll notice that the format is easy to read and follow, both by an ATS and a human eye. Much of the styling is more about spacing and the tactical use of bolding and bullet points.
So 4 more detailed ideas to think about are, and this is really kind of just thinking about the ATS even more, try to use one font if you can, and try to not use too many text sizes. So we're going to look about it in the tool afterwards. Sometimes when it's kind of passing for optical character recognition, it can sort of mess things up. So we're just sort of saying like one font size for the heading, for subheadings, and then for the text afterwards. Don't use columns. They don't like columns. I don't like columns. So this is something that I always say to clients, don't use columns. It kind of looks all right, and it might be fine on a website, but it's not cool. ATSs don't like it. Try and use simple bullet points. I don't see this so often, but often candidates want to differentiate themselves by being a little bit fancy and kind of like, look, my bullet points are ostriches, and it's just like, what the fuck? I mean, number one, why do I care? Number two, if an ATS can't pass it, it might discount it, and that might affect sort of how it interprets the rest of that line. Just simple dot dash will do. Also, kind of across the board, don't use graphics. What I mean by this is sort of a graphical representation of your skills. This is a really common one. Like, I see this a lot with designers, and don't get me wrong, some of these CVs are beautiful and a lot of hard work has gone into it, but who's going to look at it? If it's an ATS, they don't care, right? If it's a human, so it'll have something different. Maybe if I'm sending something over LinkedIn to a human, I'd be like, here's my human CV. And then with the graphics, you want to think all of that stuff the ATS is just going to discount. It's just going to ignore it. So not only, you know, are you missing out on the fact the ATS has ignored it, that works kind of for nothing. So don't have graphics, full stop. Next, let's talk about structure. So structure means how the information is going to be laid out on the page. You could also think of this as formatting. There are 5 things to think about: personal information, education, work experience, extracurricular activities, which I basically classify as everything that isn't work experience or education, and then finally skills and interests. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back to the example, which you can download in the description below, and we're going to have a sexy slideshow so that I can really point out the individual things that we want to be looking out for as we kind of format this stuff, because I find if you break it down by chunks, it's much easier to understand and is more manageable.
So let's check out our CV structure in another sexy slideshow. I know you're saying like, I can't believe it, so many slideshows. I'm so lucky. So what I want to do is basically take you through the individual parts of that example CV we've referred to a couple of times. What I find really useful is when people point stuff out to me and make it hyper visual with arrows, because then I can really understand and kind of get into the meat of it. So first of all, in personal details, you've got the name and also the nickname up the top. I realise that this is a little bit controversial. What I often say to clients, say for example they've got a name that I know people might find difficult to pronounce, I just say, look, if it's going to make the slightest bit of difference, there's a difference between you saying that's not right and I agree, because I have a difficult sounding second name, Mutia, which people always butcher. But I just say, look, if I can just kind of get past somebody just because I've got a nickname like Steve, then fine, right? And we can argue that all we like, but the point is that's kind of the reality. I can't prove that, but I think it just might make the 1% difference. Then we've got mobile number, a sensible email, and also just town and postcode. Don't put your full address on your CV. Some people also put their date of birth, and pretty much almost give me everything I need to steal your identity. Next, we're talking about education. So we want the dates, the university, the subject, and really importantly, the grade. I don't know how many times I've looked at candidate CVs and they've just missed off the grade. And if you're applying for a big job at a big firm, a lot of them require a particular grade, probably a 2-1 at bachelor's. So you need to have that on there because the ATS is going to pass for that. We would also include relevant modules. Now, some people include no modules or they'll explain their dissertation. It's not really necessary. Again, we're just thinking about what are they looking for. So if we're applying for a finance role, then we're going to try and mention stuff that's financy, like financial mathematics, that kind of thing. You might have a standard list. You don't have to provide the whole list. I mean, if you have the space, then fine. But again, think about optimizing for the ATS and not the human. Next, talking about work experience, so the dates, the company, do put the position on there. Very often someone will just put like intern or kind of summer internship, something like that, but it's not really specific. And a lot of the ATSs, they will pass and look out for bolding and also something that they believe is presented as a job title and a company. So if you're applying, say for example, to be a accounts assistant and you've previously had a role as an intern and you were an accounts assistant or accounts assistant intern, put it in there, because they're going to pick that up and go, well, this guy was an accounts assistant before. Then we have the experience, and crucially, I love putting in key skills. This is, for me, has always been a game changer for all of our client CVs, because you can amend this so quickly and easily. You can amend the experience to suit the roles as and when is necessary. Not like I worked at McDonald's and I also, I don't know, did something to do with corporate finance. It's got to be realistic if a human looks at it, but this with the key skills makes it really easy to edit and match the skills in the job description. Same again for the extracurricular activities, whether that be volunteering, clubs, societies, and you can also get skills out of this here. This is really important if you don't have work experience. And also thinking about the work experience before, you don't have to have work experience at the same. Just say I've developed a particular set of skills. And then finally, I like to have a little bit at the end, which is skills and interests, because people don't really know where to put this. They can put this everywhere. The only way that I would change it is that if you're doing something that's super technical, like for example a software engineer, I'd put your skills first. I'd even put it above your education, because I think that's kind of what they're looking for, right? You know, if I'm looking for a mechanic, I want you to know that you're a mechanic that specializes in Hondas, because my car's a Honda. So I'm really going to be looking for Honda first and then mechanics, that kind of thing. So when you lay out the languages, make sure you say to what level that you're at. Just as a guideline, you want to be business fluent and above. If you're not business fluent, don't put the language on your CV. I've had a couple of candidates interview for roles or been invited to interview and they don't speak the language. I can remember I had a candidate, a client who had a terrible experience. He had to involve for a management consultant in German, and his German was not great and he really didn't enjoy it. Plus it's, you know, you might say, oh, you know, I want to try, but they're going to test your language. So you need to be confident enough to have a conversation in it. Same for the coding languages. Try and put it in a way to sort of say, I realise there's a little mistake there next to MATLAB. So try and put it in a way that helps the other person understand how good are you. Like, are you beginner, intermediate? They're generally looking, if it's a graduate role, you can have some more, but try and keep the list short. Sometimes when I've actually, in another role, when we were hiring for developers, I'd see a lot of developers, software, front and back end developers, software engineers, who would kind of list out, students would list out kind of 10 different or 15 different coding languages. They didn't know that many languages. Right, and then interest is just something a little bit about you.
Okay, so now we've got our styling and structure sorted, we want to talk about skills and experience. Now remember what we said, the styling and structure kind of gives us our baseline, our foundational CV, so we can keep coming back to this whenever we like, and then using the skills and experience from a job description, we can start to tweak that description to make sure that we're matching those two things together. And what I want to do with you is actually take you through a job description and show you how we would do this. Now, the job description that I'm going to show you shortly in a screen share and then go through and pick out some skills and experience and walk through this with you can actually be found in our Skillshare course, which is called Cover Letters That Get Interviews. So if you want to download that particular handout, then just go down into the description below. I think underneath the timestamp there's all blurbs and there's all like, look at all my stuff. And then you can, in there you'll see the free Cover Letters That Get Interviews course. So we're going to be using a job description for a real estate debt strategy analyst for Blackstone. I know, right? So the short story is super competitive position for a top investment bank. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that job description to create a CV which tells their ATS that we're a great match for the job. I cannot stress to you how important job descriptions are, and almost all candidates just completely ignore them. And it's easy enough to do because basically you get jaded. You just think, oh my God, I'm having to do this again, and click again and apply again. And the fact is, you want to really think about concentrating on quality over quantity. So time and time again, what we find with our clients is that actually they don't apply for loads of jobs, but we do spend a lot of time thinking about those applications and what we want to say and getting them matched so that they're going to move on to the interview. And really the basic idea is pretty simple. Read the job description, select some keywords, sprinkle them in the CV, and then test it out.
So this job is quite competitive, probably well above the UK graduate average for applications per role. So it's actually lower than people think. It's about 20 to 1. I would say this role, because it's pretty specialised. It's a real estate debt strategies analyst is quite a specialised role in an investment bank. Plus it's Blackstone, which is a top tier investment bank as well. So this would probably be closer to 50 to or 100 to 1. Which means for every job there might be 50 to 100 applications, but of course we can't know precisely. I'm just guessing. There's no science involved. So what we're most interested in is the job description, responsibilities and qualifications. So here, see here, like they give the blurb, this is why Blackstone's awesome, this is why their real estate business is awesome. I think it's pretty awesome, to be fair. Then we've got the job description and the responsibilities. So I've highlighted these because you can kind of get lost. I like to copy and paste the job description and put it in a Word because it gets rid of all the formatting and the nice pictures, and you know, there's kind of like some smiling young person going, I can't believe I joined this company, it's amazing. You know, it's just distracting. I'm not saying that they're lying, but they're probably lying. So, you know, the responsibilities day to day, specific responsibilities, and also their qualifications. Now, I understand that not every job is like that. Blackstone's job description is really good in terms of they've been really clear about what they want. You look somewhere else, like you might look at, you know, a Barclays, for example. Their job description is not particularly helpful. Essentials are okay, but you sort of have to dig in. But so sometimes you might have to decode, and sort of what I like to do is I'll copy and paste the whole thing, and then I delete everything that's not useful, and that's really handy. So instead of trying to pick stuff out, I just delete all of this bump and be like, oh, this isn't important. So basically what we'll do is that Blackstone are essentially telling us what they want. They say, we want somebody whose work, so our analysts, their work will include this. So they'd quite like it if you've done something like that before. Same for this. And also they're asking for these skills. And notice these skills are reasonably vague. I don't think there's anything massively technical here. Not highly recent, because it's unlikely a graduate will have worked on legacy loans, for example. And then what we do is we can, the more kind of skills and experiences we can pick out, the more likely we're going to kind of match the pattern. Now, we don't know if this is the only thing. We can't sort of predict the algorithm. And I'm not saying that there's a magic formula, but I just tend to like pick out a couple of things and put them in the CV if it's true. That is really important. So don't just lie. You know, take things that you can actually say, oh yeah, I kind of did that, but I've explained it in a different way. So again, back to a sexy slideshow. So I wanted to show you how we could kind of represent this. So all we've done is we've ripped out the skills and experience from the Blackstone job description. And you can see on the experience, there's like 10 different things. New loan originations, restructurings, recapitalization market. I don't really understand what all this stuff means. Some stuff, right? And then the same for the skills. So we've got 9 skills and we've got 10 items of experience. Then we can just pick and choose what we can basically put in our CV, what we can get away with. And also don't forget what is true. The reason why I wanted to show you this in a real example is this. Basically, this is the skills and experience part of the triple SE. We just want to repeat this process for every job you apply to. Now, bearing in mind, say for example, you really want to be a real estate debt strategies analyst. If you are, holla, and just throw us a comment. Just be like, he's talking about me, yo. What I mean is, the same job role are kind of going to have the same skills, but it's always useful to look at the job description. Is it time consuming? Yeah, but it's less time consuming than you sitting there for 10 hours applying for jobs and just getting rejected because your CV just isn't a match for the job description. And trust me, it's better to do a few applications well than 100 applications badly, because you're only looking for one result. That's the thing. We're trying to optimize for success, and it is a winner takes all game. You only need to be successful once. So I really kind of plead with you and thinking about those 4 CV principles, optimizing for the ATS, and that there is no perfect CV, making sure that your CV is, matching those experiences and skills.
As promised, what about if you have no work experience? If you're one of those people who has so many memes, right? No experience, no job, and I've been there, I can really understand it. Now, first of all, the first thing that I want to break, or the false belief that I really want to challenge, is that no one has no experience. Probably most of you who are watching this have had at least one part-time job and have engaged in one extracurricular activity outside of your studies. You've almost all done that, or you're like the boy in the bubble, right? So if we kind of dispel that myth and sort of break away from that, actually what people are saying is, I don't have hyper-specific experience. Say I want to be an accountant. I've never worked as an accountant, therefore my experience isn't suitable. But what we're going to look at now is the fact that it really doesn't matter. So a lot of the times as a graduate, something to understand is that of course you don't have the experience. That's the whole point, because you're a graduate, because you're fresh, you're new, you're young, you're like full of the joys of spring, and you're kind of breaking into a career, into your first career. You just need to tailor the skills and experience that you have to the job description and what they're looking for. And we're actually going to do this again. So when we're writing a personal introduction, now bearing in mind a personal introduction or personal statement, so it's 5 lines max, it's just underneath your personal details and above education. I only really want to see this if you've got no work experience. If you have, then that's fine, because that's what you can tailor. But you're basically looking for material that you can work with and chop and change some skills and experience. So we're looking for 5 lines max, work in the third person. So I'm going to show you an example. Here's one I made earlier for the same job for Blackstone, and what I would suggest a candidate would say for that, so we can really hit a lot of those experience and skills keywords.
So what about if you've got no work experience and you still wanted to apply for a role like this, for this real estate debt strategies analyst at Blackstone? We're going to use this as an example, and I'm going to show you the difference with our example CV if Sammy had work experience and if she didn't have work experience. And if you stick around until the end, I'm actually going to show you how I can create a CV with a personal statement which is a better match for this role than a CV which has work experience but isn't tailored to the experience and skills within the job description. So we've already identified these kind of, 10 pieces of experience and 9 skills. So I could write something like this as a personal profile. So we're looking for third person, no more than 5 lines. Sammy is a recent finance graduate with a deep interest in loans, restructuring and financial analysis. Having studied modelling, market research and competitive analysis during her bachelor's degree, she's suited to this role. Throughout her studies, she has demonstrated the ability to write effectively, great attention to detail, good judgment and intellectual curiosity. So in 5 lines, we hit 10 of the 19 things that Blackstone are looking for. Now, if your lack of experience is going to count against you anyway, there's nothing that you can do about that. So this is Sammy's CV, where she had her work experience at these 2 different banks and also a school. But the point is that you can create a compelling personal profile which really hits those keywords, and you're doing that in a natural way, and you can pick that out for any job description. All I want to do is create a good enough case for the ATS to pick me up as someone of interest. This method of breaking down the skills and experience for your job description and putting it in your CV will work for any job application. It's just a question of patience. So now, as I promised, I'm going to show you 2 cool tools which will make tailoring your CV even easier, and I'm going to show you why for this job at Blackstone, this CV with no experience is actually better tailored and a better match than this CV with experience. As I spoke about, I want to talk to you about 2 cool tools which are going to make your life easier when it comes to matching up the job description and the skills and experience to your CV. So the first one of these is called JobScan. Really nice. I've used this for probably about a year. It's free to use, so both of these are free tools. You just log in with your LinkedIn. With the free account here, I think you get 6 free scans. So essentially what it does is it will ask you to upload your resume. So we're going to use a dummy CV. Now remember, before we had this dummy CV and a dummy CV no experience, and I'll show you that the CV of no experience that's got a tailored personal profile is actually going to be a better match. So we'll upload the CV. We're going to grab our job description, put it in here, and then scan. When the scan comes back, we get a match rate. So this explains to you how well matched the CV is. JobScan say they recommend a match rate of 80% or above. To be honest, I find 50% or above is fine. You could drive yourself absolutely mental doing this. So I think 50% above is fine in my experience working with this. And it talks about, how many skills have you matched for. So we're missing 3 out of 10 things for an ATS. We're also missing out skills as well, which are the things that we kind of want to concentrate on. You can also use this for cover letters, which is super cool. So what are we missing for ATS wise? Well, we haven't added job company name and web address, which is cool. I wouldn't worry about the web address, but we have kept the company's names a secret to protect our fictional client's identity. It says we're missing 4 important high value skills, and also that we're applying for a job which has analyst in the job title, but we never mention that anywhere, that we have been an analyst or have that type of experience, which is interesting, right? And a couple of other things from recruiters. This is interesting. You want to consider having at least 5 specific achievements or measurable results. So here, the biggie here is that we've got no mention of real estate, and that's mentioned 15 times in the job description. Financing, investing, financial modelling, and also we haven't got any of these soft skills. So JobScan's identified 10 soft skills that we're missing, and you can even flick over and see the highlighted skills. So what I want to do now is I'm going to show you that this actually comes out at 18%. I did this, here's one I did earlier. So I want to show you how we can get a better match rate with the CV with no work experience, but with a slightly modified personal profile. Actually, all I did was add real estate because I just thought that was a biggie, right? So we scan it again and we actually get a slightly better match rate. 23%, a 5% better match rate just for having real estate in there. We've got 9 of those skills. We've I think we've got 4 or 5 more skills as well. We're missing some other stuff. So our section headings, we want work history or professional experience. But that's so interesting, right? Because basically it kind of puts paid to when people turn around, they're like, oh yeah, I haven't got the work experience. Well, it doesn't really matter. Not as far as an ATS is concerned. Can't really tell the difference. So that's just something to bear in mind. JobScan, wonderful, highly recommend it, jobscan.co, and that link will be in the description. The other tool is more formatting tool, but it's a really lovely tool. They're a relatively new company from Israel. I actually found them through Product Hunt. So they offer a free resume builder, a free readability inspector, and a keyword inspector. What I really like is the readability inspector. So you go here, you upload your CV, and this is really important. So we're going to upload our dummy CV, choose the language. What happens is an ATS will either pass 3 different ways: OCR, optical character recognition, they use a Java text extractor, a Python text extractor. So what it's basically saying is this is how your this is basically how the ATS is seeing your CV. So it might kind of be squiggled out, and it says that the formatting might be weird. But if the sentences become mixed in all passes, try to simplify the layout of your resume. So this is interesting. You know, there's something weird going on here, but this is super useful because we get to see it exactly in the eyes of the ATS. And this is really relevant if you're using graphics or kind of like nice designs and you're not sure how an ATS will see it. I highly recommend this, and again, that's free. Guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. It took us quite a long time to make it. Please like the video, comment about videos that you'd like to see next, subscribe to the channel to get videos every week on how to get hired, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.